Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you all so much for joining us on this beautiful morning. I'm going to pass the microphone over to Dean Fritz Mayer of the Korbel School to get us going.
Oh, thanks, Daz. Thanks for that extensive introduction. Everybody knows me. It's good to see everybody. My role is mostly ceremonial, but to welcome everyone, good morning. It is awesome to see such a turnout this morning. This is going to be a really fascinating program, I think, and I'm personally very interested in learning about it. Just a quick word just about this series, the Scrivner Roundtable. I feel like it's continuing to build momentum. It's really an effort on our part to connect with scholars and people doing real work in the community, the think tank community, people who are doing evidence-based work on a variety of important topics, particularly those facing Colorado. So it's congratulations to you and your team for this whole series. Welcome. Enjoy the breakfast, but also really looking forward to the presentation and discussion this morning. So welcome to our guests as well. With that, I'll hand it back to Naz, who is director of the Scrivner Institute, and I'll give her bio.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. As Fritz said, what we're doing here today is very much in the spirit of the community that we're rooted in. And so I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. We'd like to acknowledge that the University of Denver campus sits on the ancestral and unceded homeland of the Cheyenne and Arapaho people who have stewarded this land for generations and whose loss we recognize and mourn. We offer continued respect and support to them and to all the indigenous tribes and nations who call Colorado and the Rocky Mountain West home. We commit to listening and affirming the stories of all in our community. Thank you for sharing with me in that. And what's really fantastic about the project that we're going to hear about today is it's also very much grounded in our community. And I'll say just a bit more about that in a moment. We're so pleased to welcome everyone here for this fantastic turnout. Thank you for joining us to what is now the 5th installment of the Scrivner Policy Roundtable, now in its 3rd year. We're especially delighted to welcome our presenters from the Denver Basic Income Project with their partners at the Graduate School of Social Work here at DU, and welcome again to all of our other roundtable partners, MPP and other students, staff and faculty working on policy issues from across the University of Denver. We're sorry today to miss Doug Scrivner. He's usually here with us for these events. It's his endowment of the Scrivner Institute that makes all of our work possible. One of our core mandates at the Scrivner Institute is to serve as an interdisciplinary hub for policy work on campus and for policy work on campus in partnership with the community. And as part of that work, the Scrivner Institute, in partnership with Dean Fritz Mayer, who I did not do justice to in my introduction, and his team, we've been working very closely on a broader civil discourse initiative. The ultimate goal of that civil discourse initiative is to renew our society's ability to have intelligent and informed disagreements about the policy challenges and issues that we face. And the way that the Scrivner Policy Roundtable attempts to take that on is to share the work of members of our community who have been working on the ground on policy challenges that face our community. And so this is such a fantastic example of a partnership, a collaboration between the university and a community organization that is working to tackle, one of the most pressing, if not the most pressing, challenges that faces us in the metro area, the challenge of homelessness and the unhoused population. The Roundtable is, by design, an invitation-only event. We intend it to be inclusive, and today we're so happy to see so many new faces. We really tried to reach out to bring more people into the conversation, but it's invitation-only by design because what we also hope to model, and this is part of the program today, is a series of roundtable conversations amongst you, the folks in this room, and we'll set some guidelines for what that conversation looks like. But just to state at the outset, we're recording the presentation portion of this presentation, and then the team has a really fantastic discussion format set up for everybody to participate in. I want to say before getting any further, thank you to Katie Aker, our assistant director of the Scrivner Institute. Fritz said thanks to me, but this doesn't happen without Katie, so really appreciate all the work that Katie's done. Everybody in this room knows that. That's it. I just want to introduce our presenters. So it's such a pleasure to welcome the team from the Denver Basic Income Project, Gwen Battis, who's the program manager of the project, Mark Donovan, who is the founder in 2020 and the executive director of the project, Maria Sierra, the community engagement manager of the Denver Basic Income Project, and Daniel Brisson, professor and director of the Center for Housing and Homelessness Research at DU's very own Graduate School of Social Work and principal investigator for the Basic Income Project. This team, just so you know how important and how timely this work is flying today, later today, to DC to present their findings from the project at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, where they're going to be discussing this intervention, basic income, as a means to addressing homelessness, as an alternative to the voucher program that has been the main approach to unhoused populations and homelessness in the United States for the last 50 years. And so it's a really timely project. It's really important work. I'm so excited for the program that you have planned for us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. We're honored to be here. I think we'll keep our opening remarks somewhat brief. We want to have this be as interactive as possible. I'd like to start with reading a couple statements that we use to ground ourselves as an organization. And these types of statements can be performative at times, and you have to work hard to make them real. And so as we read them, we think deeply about them, and every day we try to actualize them and build them into the fabric of what we do. I'm going to repeat the land acknowledgement because I want to cover what we ground in every day as well. I think it's a good starting point. So the land on which we reside is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize there are more than 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. We honor elders past, present, and future, and those who have stewarded the land throughout generations. We embrace and benefit from the contemporary and dynamic role that the tribes maintain. Over 120 nations are represented in the Denver metro area today. We also recognize that government, academic, and cultural institutions were founded upon and continue to enact exclusions and erasures of indigenous peoples. Colorado was the site of the Sand Creek Massacre in 1864, which killed 230 Native people, mainly children, women, and the elderly. Denver was one of 9 federal relocation sites used by the Bureau of Indian Affairs in the 1950s and the 1960s in an effort to forcefully acculturate indigenous communities and terminate the treaty obligations which the federal government held with their nations. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle ongoing legacies of oppression and inequities and recognize and celebrate the current and future contributions of indigenous communities in Denver. I think that's a good starting point. Our mission is the Denver Basic Income Project serves unhoused people by examining the impact of direct cash distributions in an effort to encourage a healthier society centered around human thriving. Our value statement, the Denver Basic Income Project recognizes and is opposed to the systemic barriers to rising out of poverty and supports providing cash assistance to those most impacted and in need. In eliminating financial barriers, we create a path to equity and social justice for the unhoused. Our organization is committed to justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging in all aspects of our organization and mission. And finally, our culture statement. The Denver Basic Income Project seeks to encourage a healthier and just society centered around human thriving. We work together to foster a welcoming community where collaborators feel a strong sense of belonging and trust. Our approach in decision-making centers the input of those with lived experience, those on the front lines, and those currently experiencing homelessness. Together, we try, we learn, and we continue to bring in creativity and boldness individually and collectively. We're about people and their self-determination and dignity, so we care about each other and being responsible and accountable to one another to carry out the vision of this work. We are the Denver Basic Income Project. So I start with that. That's what we ground in. That's how we organize. That's how we center our work every day. This is a demonstration project that is intended to explore the impact of providing direct cash assistance to people who are experiencing homelessness in Denver. Katie, are we able to start with that video?
I've been homeless before in shelters, had to stay in shelters, even with my children, which is not an easy thing to do. When we were at the roadway shelter, one of the great things they had was gardening. That's my prayer closet, kind of, a lot of times, my serenity place.
The Denver Basic Income Project is a demonstration project to show the power of providing unconditional cash to people who are experiencing homelessness. And we are hearing just incredible stories of transformation.
I was living out in my car in, believe this or not, in the same King Soopers my son manages now, parking lot. So in that, I was in and out of the hospital for medical reasons. I was pretty much drinking myself away. But in the midst of that, now time is lapsing. You know, there's a gap in employment. Now you have to explain that.
Lived with my parents throughout high school, and then I ended up becoming homeless because I wanted to be in a relationship, and then that's when I started using drugs. I was homeless for probably about 4 years, and then I went into treatment. I moved to Joshua Station when Lucas turned 1.
Jennifer came to Joshua Station just about 2 years ago. She's a single mom, and she has had some really strong desires to further her education. It took this almost 2 years for her to get to that starting line because there were other areas in her life that she needed to get settled first. And receiving Denver Basic Income Project helped create that stability so that then she could launch to the other areas of her life.
The Colorado Coalition for the Homeless is a housing, health care, and supportive services provider. We know that when you give people resources, they do a much better job in managing their life. And so many people that we work with and work along beside of to resolve their homelessness just need a little access to resources. Sometimes that's in the form of housing, sometimes that's in the form of healthcare coverage, sometimes that's in the form of just basic assistance like cash. And people are really using these resources in the same way that housed individuals would use these resources.
I can utilize that money for down payment, for deposit, for some month, you know.
To get clothes from Lucas, toys for him, stuff for myself, do some self-care. When I move out of Joshua Station, I do have some money to where I can buy furniture, pay my down payment.
And just even with having my youngest granddaughter with me right now and being able to, you know, have some things there for her and, you know, being able to help with her, being able to say, okay, I have a stable place now. I'm not homeless. You can come and stay with me. You know, the baby can come and stay.
And we're going to provide this cash to you unconditionally. And we are showing that it is incredibly powerful and it creates an accelerated path to safety, to stability, to housing, and to thriving.
We ultimately know what we need to do. We have what it takes within us to change our lives. We really do.
There's a class that I'm looking into. I hope we'll get to start soon. Learning how to write grants and proposals, which is what I actually had a mini MBA in 20 years ago. This class will allow me to, you know, refresh that.
Maybe like social work or human services. I like helping people. I like talking with people. So something in that field.
Right now, I was able to start looking for work. I just can't jump on any job that would come my way or open their doors to me. I used to do that all the time just to make ends meet. Now I'm thinking future. Now I'm thinking my age, my health.
The hope is that we can just keep the momentum going, bring as many people on board as possible, and get to that place of greater justice, of greater opportunity. Most people don't experience that. And cash is freedom. And poverty is a form of incarceration. And it's wrong, and we can do better. All right, thanks everyone. It feels a little heavy, like the land, not all of that. And these are realities, but I want to just circle back to kind of what this is creating and what it's built on, which is hope. Hope and a belief that we can do better together and that we shouldn't give up and think that this is a battle that can't be won. And so we need to innovate, and we're excited to share with you about this program and about what we're doing. But I think what we want to encourage everybody around us is to continue to work together and believe that we can actually move the needle on the injustice that we have throughout our society and really reduce drastically homelessness and poverty in Denver, in Colorado, and across the country. I'm an entrepreneur for the last 30 years, and I moved into this space in 2020 when I saw COVID hitting and people losing their sources of income, and at the same time, the wealth at the top of our income ladder or wealth just growing incredibly, like Apple growing by $1 trillion in market capitalization in 2020. And I felt the need to just act immediately and try to do something. And I started to explore testing basic income with direct cash grants to individuals that had been impacted by COVID. And I started to research what was happening in the space around the country and around the world. And I was really blown away at how impactful it can be, how immediate and cost-effective it can be. And we decided to organize. So I reached out to Danny and his team at the Center for Housing and Homelessness Research, and we started to meet weekly in 2021 and to design and think about how we could build upon the work that had gone before us and show what's possible. And Denver right now is the first and largest program of its kind to distribute cash at this scale to people experiencing homelessness. And so we're going to take this opportunity to share a bit about how the program was designed and also talk about our initial interim results, and then we want to have a really robust conversation to hear. It's a complex topic. There's a lot of views on it. We want to dive right into it with you. So thanks for having us. I'm going to hand it over to Maria to talk a little bit about the program design.
Ready? We, like Mark said, we started meeting weekly in early 2021, and we really wanted to get input from people with lived experience, people on the ground doing work with our unhoused community. And so we, with that input from all of those people and meeting, we thought about what do we want to give? We looked at other projects across the country that were doing direct cash programs, not with the unhoused, and we landed on 3 different payment groups, and I'll explain how we landed on each of those. But one payment group, as you can see, received $1,000 a month for 12 months. The second one received a lump sum up front, and then $500 a month for 11 months, so that both groups get $12,000 for the year. And then we had a comparison group that received $50 a month. We wanted to study the impact of the lump sum. You know, if somebody had a big lump sum of cash, how is that going to impact their life in their unhoused situation? The $1,000, we all know that you can't rent anything for $1,000, but we weren't out here to provide that full-on support, right, and pay rent for somebody necessarily, but we understood that that would be a nice chunk. It would help even with upfront costs if people were getting securing housing. The 6,500 number came from a few of our lived experienced voices shared, if I could just get a trailer or a motor home, you know, I can get off the street, I can be in a secure place, I can go look for a job, I can, you know that I can come back every day and get a safe and restful sleep so that I can work. It was those types of, that type of feedback that we landed on that. And the comparison group, and I'm not a researcher, so I'll let Danny talk more about that, but we didn't want to have a comparison group that didn't receive anything. We just didn't feel like it was fair. And so I can't remember, honestly, why we landed on $50, but I think that just the point was we didn't want to not give a comparison group anything. And that is kind of like what it came up with, how we came up with that. We also knew that our unhoused community doesn't stay in one place. And so with the help of our partners, we have 19 partners, and our partners are different community-based organizations. from one end of the spectrum to the other. Some provide a multitude of services that aren't specific to the unhoused community, but include the unhoused community, and some are specific to the unhoused community. We knew that we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, and we weren't trying to provide some sort of service. We wanted to be just focusing on the direct cash and building relationships with our partners and our participants. And so we knew that we needed to stay in connection with them. And so we gave everybody a cell phone. They had 1 year of service with that cell phone. And we also know that a lot of people, unhoused or housed, are not in the banking system. So we had to provide a payment card for those who are not in the banking system, but also support them if they were interested in learning more about that to dispel any concerns that they had. And so that is the very, very basic basis. I'll quickly go over like what the qualifications were. So you had to be 18 years of age or older. You had to be connected to one of our partners. So either currently getting services of some sort or just support in general. You had to not have any severe or unaddressed substance misuse or mental health issues. And we landed on an evaluation with input from different clinicians. That was a self-report evaluation, and that was embedded in our application. And so if a applicant scored a certain number, then they were disqualified. You also had to be experiencing homelessness, and we used the McKinney-Vento definition that encompasses people who are couch surfing, doubling up families. We really wanted to reach all of those that are experiencing homelessness that we don't hear about, or you don't hear about a lot. And we really wanted the participant demographic to reflect the demographics of those experiencing homelessness in the city and county of Denver. So you had to be experiencing homelessness in the city and county of Denver. Well, how do you measure that? It was through those partners, is what we did. And that's like the basis of it.
Just a couple points. I think most people in this room probably understand the difference between UBI and guaranteed income, but I think I'll just explain that real quickly. A universal basic income would be setting basic income for everybody universally, and a guaranteed income, you draw a line somewhere and you have some type of means testing. And so we're doing a guaranteed income program for a specific community. To put the scale in context, we ran 2 pilots. First one with 8 participants and 2 partners, the second one with 28 participants and 8 partners, and then finally launched at scale with 807 participants across the 3 payment cohorts and 19 partner organizations. To date, we've deployed over $6.5 million in unconditional cash to our unhoused neighbors here in Denver, and we've produced interim quantitative and qualitative results so far that are going to be reviewed by Dr. Brisson. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I want to pause before I get into the results to say we're just really looking forward to this opportunity. We're giving you an intro, right? But this is a roundtable, and what we're really looking forward to is the very next section, which comes after my talk, where we get to dialogue. And we're going to ask you all, we're going to ask a series of 4 questions, and we're going to ask you to discuss those, and then we're going to come back and discuss. But we're just as excited. We're very excited for the opportunity to hear from you. So please know we're providing this basic information, and we invite questions about more detail and what does that mean and why that choice. We really look forward to getting into that dialogue. There's a quote up here that I'll read in a minute, but to the point, to give you the information about the project, I want to tell you how we chose to study the Denver Basic Income Project. So you can think about some of the results in this that I'm going to present. We chose a mixed methods randomized control trial for the 807 participants. There are 2 rounds, and the payments are for 12 months. So there are 2 rounds of qualitative interviews, one at 2 months to capture initial perceptions of the Denver Basic Income Project, and there's a report on the Denver Basic Income Project website. We believe in open sourcing or making open all our data, all our results. So please go to the DBIP website. You should be able to find everything there. If you have a question about something that's there, we'd be happy to try to make that transparent for you as well. So the results of 24 qualitative interviews from participants in group A, B, and C, those 3 groups that Maria described, is on our website. Then we have, we randomized, there were about 1,500 applications for the 800 or so spots in the DBIP program. And those 807 were selected and randomized into either group A, B, or C. All participants were asked if they would consent to the research. About 92% of people said yes, we would like to, we're willing to do the research. And then about 78% actually gave us research materials. And the primary research material, and what you'll see in the coming slides, comes from what we call our long-form survey. It's survey research, typical. I would guess many of you are familiar with it, right? A 30-minute, 20 to 30-minute survey that asks people questions about the outcomes or domains of interest for our project. And those are housing. We're interested in housing outcomes. We're interested in health outcomes, behavioral, physical health outcomes. We're interested in what we've called network outcomes, family dynamics, connections. We are interested in financial security outcomes. And I feel like I'm missing an important one, but that's okay because I believe you can find those on our website as well, the research questions and domains that we're studying. So the long-form survey was delivered at enrollment, when people enrolled in the program, and then at 6 months, after 6 months in the program, and we are currently finishing a 10-month delivery of that survey. But our interim report, also online, and what has caught a lot of buzz in the last month or so for DBIP, the results of our interim report take that enrollment survey and the 6-month survey and report on those. So how are people doing part way through the program? We also had a text-based survey every 2 weeks to the participants. We had about a 50% response rate on that bi-weekly text. And then some participants who weren't banked were told, we can deliver your monthly guaranteed income either on a bank account that you create, or we can give you a bank card with a bank that we've established, and that bank is UCO. I don't actually know if it's a bank or the bank card. But for participants who opted into the UCO banking, they also had the opportunity to consent to share their spending data, and so we do have spending data for participants as well. Yeah, if I miss details, you can certainly ask me throughout the rest of the morning. So qualitative and quantitative and a mix, and this is particularly important at this point in time when we're at the interim and we're not fully sure what the impact of the program is, but we're putting puzzle pieces together. We have part of a puzzle put together and taking all the information we have to understand the impact of DBIP. And here's a oh, can you go back to that quote so I could read it out loud? I'm sorry. When you build a house, this is from a participant. When you build a house, you have to start with the foundation. You can't start with the walls and then bring in a foundation. So that's what the DBIP program has done for me. It's giving me a strong, sturdy foundation to be successful and to be productive. And Gwen, can you forward all the way to the descriptive graphic? Yeah. There you go, thanks. So at this point, we know something, but we don't know everything. What we do know is who is participating in DBIP, and you can see who's participating in DBIP. About 50% identifying as women, about 10% veterans, about just over 20, almost 25% families. About 50% identify as having a disability. And then, importantly, part of the original design, we know that people of color, particularly people identifying as Black and Indigenous, are overrepresented among those counted as homeless in Denver. People identifying as Black are overrepresented about twice what we would expect from the general population here in Denver. And people identifying as Indigenous, I believe, are overrepresented about 7 times what they are in the general population. So a really important part of our program was to make sure that we capture people at least the rate at which they are represented among those counted as homeless, understanding, as Mark said in the intro, that certainly a significant portion of the cause of homelessness can be attributed to structural factors, including racism, that keep people from opportunity and access, and lots of pieces there. And so the way we ensured that our people receiving guaranteed income in Denver were represented at least at the rate by racial identity of those in Denver. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. Is we partnered with organizations that also had that same goal of making sure their services were delivered to people of color. And so you can see, in fact, when we ran, when we looked at applications and ultimately who was enrolled, we captured people at least at the rate, by their racial identity, at least at the rate at which they're represented in the Denver population. So that was a mouthful. I'm not actually sorry. I'm glad to hit that important point, but that was a mouthful. Can you go back to the first? Yeah. So here are some interim results, and they're in bullet point here. We have a 2-pager of our interim results, which are on your tables. So if you don't feel like looking at the slide or hearing me talk about that or seeing them in more detail, you can see the exact same things on your table there. I believe there's 1 copy of the quant interim report on each table too. So you can see in much more detail there. We've been asked a number of times, well, why are you reporting on this or that? We made choices as the research team, and we put in the pieces that we thought were most pertinent. And so really, for more detail, dig into that report, both the 2-pager and the report are online. Some interesting results we have pulled out. Gwen, if you could go to the first chart. The bar chart on the left there, more participants in each group reporting and living in homes that they rent or own. This is an interesting chart, right? The purple, if it looks purple to you, chart represents where people lived at enrollment. And you can see participants in group A, B, and C, some were housed at the time of enrollment. Well, that's a little funny because I thought this was for people who were unhoused. There's just a little blip there, which is eligibility criteria required that someone was unhoused the day before application. So the application asked, where did you sleep last night? And then subsequently, in 2 months or so, people were enrolled. And so in those 2 months, some people did find housing, but were still eligible for DBIP. And so that's what you see there. And then you see people reporting living in a home that they rent or own went up substantially for people in all groups. And maybe that's a theme for our interim results. These interim results are not showing you the impact of DBIP. They're showing you what's happened at DBIP from 0 to 6 months. And there's lots of reasons we think these are going to change at 10 months, and at 24 months, and at 36 months. And we'll see how long we can keep the study going. But these are really early findings. And I'm going to leave it at that for you to discuss amongst yourselves and to ask our team questions later. The next bar chart there has gotten a lot of attention, and it shows how many people from each group reported sleeping outside at enrollment, and then the orange bars at the 6-month follow-up. And particularly interesting are that over 10, I don't remember exactly the number, 12 it looks like, people in Group A reported sleeping outside at enrollment, and 0 reported sleeping outside at 6 months. Can you go to the next slide, Gwen? And then we have financial wellness here, and you can see people in each group, Group A, B, and C, and Maria said earlier, you can ask Daniel more about the active comparison group, right? When we designed this study, we certainly thought that people from Group C wouldn't see the same benefits as people from Group A and B. And so we have ideas about why that is. Other people have ideas. We're not sure if we haven't tested empirically those ideas yet, but certainly a rich discussion to be had there. But then differently in the bar chart that follows, employment. And this is, for me, this is maybe one of the most interesting findings that we've seen so far, mostly because it matches what we might expect from the design of the study. And that people in Group A had higher employment at the 6-month follow-up, and people in Group B had higher employment at the 6-month follow-up, and people in Group C did not. And if you just go back to guaranteed basic income as a theory, and maybe what I heard in the beginning of this roundtable, that we invite a diverse discussion about policies and why we believe something may or may not work. Certainly one of the things you might hear in opposition to guaranteed income is that why would we give people money? Disincentivize work, give people a handout. And this chart isn't saying that at all. And so an interesting point as well. Gwen, yeah, if you could go 2 forward maybe. Yeah, so what's next? This is my segue to Gwen, who's going to organize us into a discussion. What's next? Boy, are we having our 1 o'clock call today? I don't know if we're having a 1 o'clock call about what's next. We've been talking for the last couple months about what's next. And one of the things we're most excited about here is to hear from you what you think of what we know so far and what's next. And we actually have some shop paper and markers, and we want to take with us your input on what's next, so that we can think more about that. So Gwen, I'll pass it to you.
Hello, everybody. I also just want to say before we dive into discussions, as the program manager, I've been with DBIP since January, and I actually graduated from Corbell and MFJS as a master's student in June. So it's nice to be back. I've been here to a number of roundtables. But as the program manager, I handle things from operations to communications and narrative change and our program details and a whole slew of other things. But when we were putting together kind of topics we wanted to hear from you all about regarding these discussions, there's a lot of things to take into account when we're talking about what's actually possible in our current policy climate, both locally and nationally. And I think that there's incredibly intelligent people in Corbell that have a lot of really valuable insights into that. So what we wanted to do is allow you all to choose what you'd like to talk about, what's most interesting to you from these 4 categories. So the first one is the guaranteed income path to policy. So for instance, if you think guaranteed income is an important program or policy to find housing, do you? How do we get there? What are the steps needed to make that happen? What are obstacles, legitimate obstacles, for instance, in Denver or nationally? To the pros and cons of basic income, right? There's great things about it, and there's faults many people can find in arguments about basic income. Who holds these opinions? Do they differ by political affiliation? And yeah, we'd love to see like a list of both. Third, which I think is a really interesting topic, as I was a communication student as well, narrative change for homelessness. Specifically, we see a lot of stereotypes and really harmful misconceptions about homelessness. And that also carries into guaranteed income, like for instance, the handout narrative and how we can change that, what needs to happen. And fourth, a conversation about DBIP's program design, what questions you have about how this program is specifically designed, what changes would you make, or suggestions, and yeah, within which current policy kind of environment do you think our program fits, and any other kind of considerations you might have. So with that, I think we're just gonna break up to different parts of the room. Danny has paper that he can stick on the wall. I think we'll do group one, just kind of in corners. So group one, group two, pros and cons. 3, I think you can stick them on the window too, Danny. So, and then group 4 somewhere over here. 1, yeah, just 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd say corners probably. Feel free to, obviously we can use tables as well if it's more comfortable, but yeah, so I'll leave it at that, and we're gonna bounce around. And
Can I just say one thing, Mark, before? I think a few people are going to leave, and it's not because they're objecting to your presentation. It's because they have class, and it's the last week of the quarter. So thanks to those of you who joined us. And I think what, Gwen, you're suggesting is that people vote with their feet, right? You move to the corner of the room that you're most interested in having a conversation about. Mark, over to you, and I think we have a question over there.
And we'll be circulating around to the different groups, so please ask questions of everyone that's on this panel. Yes, Jan? Okay, the question was about if we're extending the program or not, and is that cost related? And so we've just received approval for $2 million from the city in their budget vote on Monday, and we have a commitment, a verbal commitment from one of our foundations that invested $1 million initially for an additional $2 million. So we have $4 million, and we feel that one of the most important things we can do right now is extend and keep showing longitudinally what happens if you maintain this income floor. So it is, fundraising is the biggest challenge in this at this moment, but we want to try to run this as long as we can because we are the first to do this, and it's really valuable data for Denver, the state, and the country. So great question, thank you. So yeah, just move yourself into whichever topic is of interest, and we'll see as you join your conversations as you work through this.